The last few RC bodies I've painted have all been done by airbrush. I find it quicker, easier, and a whole lot less smelly, and be able to produce great results like this that I simply would not be able to do via rattle can. In this video I'm going to give you a brief review of my Fengda Airbrush setup and set about painting an RC body, a new Madcap body shell, in something that hopefully Lord Vader would be proud of. Just bring the camera over and take a closer look. So this is the main part of the setup. We have a Fengda FD186 Compressor and a Fengda FD130 Airbrush Kit. Now, these are not high-end, not by a long way. However, there's no way I was going to be spending £300+ or the equivalent in dollars for a kit when I didn't even know whether I'd be enjoying airbrushing generally. So this is what I would consider to be about the basic approved kind of kit that you can get away with. Now, the key features of this overall setup, and I'll show you the link that I got it from Amazon. I'll probably put in the description a link to it in Amazon. The overall kit, I think, is a little bit over £100, maybe £150. So certainly on the cheap end of the scale, but it has some features that are kind of desirable to have. First of all, I mentioned we've got the compressor. Now, these will come in a whole range of different sizes. This is, what's that, about 10 inches long, something like that. It has an amount of heatsink here, but if the compressor is going all the time, this overall does get hot. It can manage to trip itself out through using it too much. It's sat on top of a cylinder. This cylinder is one of the things that separates the very cheapest kits from the more useful ones. It's only a small cylinder. I know anyone in the US will be laughing at me. You know, they've probably got 10+ litre cylinders or beyond. I know they come very affordable from Harbour Freight and the like, but that's simply not available in the UK. This is quite a small hobby kind of grade setup. There's enough capacity in this cylinder to mean that it evens out the overall pressure. So you can have the compressor pumping, put some capacity into the cylinder here, and then as you're drawing air through the airbrush itself, you're drawing it from this cylinder. It's a much more carefully controlled supply of air. If you're relying on the air compressor alone, it leads to a certain amount of pulsing of the air through the airbrush. So the other things you see on this particular kit is at the front here, this is a moisture trap. So air being fed through the compressor, there's an amount of moisture in that air. The cylinder has moisture in it, and you really don't want that going through the airbrush itself. And so a moisture trap on the cylinder itself is enough to mean that that moisture gets separated and you've just got air left going through the pipe here. And the other thing, if I can manage to rotate, I suppose I'll lift my camera one moment. The other thing here is this has got a regulator, so you can control the overall pressure itself. So you can see a pressure gauge on the back here. Can it focus? You see a pressure gauge on the back here, and through this regulator you can control overall what that pressure would be. Yeah. That is a basic but not minimal air compressor and cylinder. Moisture trap, pressure regulator, that's all part of that same Fengda overall kit. And in that same bundle is a cheap but manageable airbrush. So this here is a Fengda FD130 airbrush. It's a 0.3 needle in it, of quite a large cup size. So there's more capacity in that than I can make use of in the amount of painting I'm doing. If you were to use most of this, you'd easily be able to paint a touring car body shell, for example. As in, you know, there is plenty of capacity in that cup. Even though it looks relatively small, you find that airbrush paint, because you're laying it down thinner, goes a lot longer way. Now this is a very budget airbrush. It has quite a nice in terms of action for the control. In and out is air, and as you pull it back, controls how much paint comes through with that air. So you'll set the regulator to a certain amount, which I guess will be about 30 psi. Yeah, something like 30 psi for most of the stuff I'm going to be doing. Press here, we'll see when I've turned it on. We'll press here and that'll let the air come out, and then you pull it back and then paint is drawn through. Basically pulling it back changes where the needle sits and allows paint to flow through and come out of this nozzle at the end here, this nozzle here. And I'll show you that very shortly. So like I say, this is quite a budget airbrush, but you can see it's possible to change this airbrush. Unscrew from there, we can change the airbrush, we can go and get a fancier model, and that compressor and cylinder still remains valid. So for the money, I think it's quite a sensible thing. I know Greg of Guru's World rates the Mobius, the Galari Mobius. That itself is something like in the UK a £70 airbrush. So half the price of the overall kit. It's probably worth it. It's probably what I will be trying to go to next. It seems quite an affordable airbrush. But for the absolute budget and basic, this does the job. I will talk a little bit about what I've done to make painting with this a bit easier. So that's the main hardware for being able to do airbrushing. The other thing to be aware of is paints. I've got, unfortunately, what I've dug out today is a lack of colour for paints because the body shell I'm going to be painting is going to be fairly dark and not have much in the way of colour on it. I have been using, I'm going to say they're probably Vallejo paints. These are all water-based acrylic paints, but they are suitable for polycarbonate. So it is something to go checking for any paints you purchase. Acrylic paints for an airbrush is great. That's the way to go. You can use these. They do not smell at all, and they're nice and convenient. They look like small bottles. You're expecting like spray cans, a Tamiya spray can or whatever. You get a big well, I suppose Tamiya's are fairly small cans, but Core RC, something like that, are all much bigger cans. The paints in these will go way further than you'll get out of a Tamiya spray can, for example. This is, I guess it's only somewhere 60ml of paint or something like that. Yeah, 60ml of paint. That'll do way more than a Tamiya spray can, way more. So there's just a selection of the Vallejo paint colours I've been using. The other essential that you kind of need, you can do, it's possible, these are water based, it's possible to do the majority of what you want thereafter with water. So you can clean the airbrush with water. I have gone and bought Airbrush Cleaner, and someone say, why on earth do you spend that much money on that specific airbrush cleaner? My take on it is, well, I may as well have the thinners, etc., that go with the paints, because if there's anything that's going to make sure those paints dissolve and get moved on, it's going to be the same branded one. So that's why I have Airbrush Cleaner from Vallejo. What I do primarily is flush the airbrush and all of its the cup and everything with water. So I'll wipe the inside of the cup with paper towels, flush it with water, and then only use Airbrush Cleaner as the last part of the cleaning process. The other thing to just mention, I guess specifically for this particular airbrush, these Vallejo paints are supposed to be good to go straight from the bottle, and I guess it might depend on the overall air temperature, that kind of thing. What I have found with this particular airbrush is if I add a couple of drops of flow improver to my reservoir or cup, I generally put one drop in at the very beginning, so in the bottom of the cup, put my paint in, put another drop or two in the top of the thing, and give it a bit of a mix up, or leave it just sat on here whilst the compressor's going. You'll see that in a minute. There's enough vibration there that it'll mix whatever I've got in the cup. I have found that in general I get much better results if I use a flow improver. Just a few drops of flow improver is enough to mean that this airbrush does not clog the same way. So what I had been finding is it's really difficult to place what's going on with it. I'm not an experienced user. As you're painting, you might find that it seems to get harder to paint and harder to paint. As in, you're either needing more air pressure or more trigger or whatever to be able to get what you thought was the same amount of paint out of. That is probably an indication that the airbrush itself is clogging up, and that's probably an indication that something like a flow improver, you could use water to do the same thing. These are water-based paints. In theory, you could use water to reduce them down. I mean, you can see here, I barely use any. You're talking a couple of drops of time. It's not it might be phenomenally expensive, but the amount you use, it doesn't particularly matter. So those are those two things. The other non-essential but nice to have, birthday, Christmas list, that kind of thing, is an airbrush cleaner. This is literally a glorified jam jar. If I just open it up, it's a jar. Oh, you can see anywhere where it's been used. The airbrush itself goes and pops in the end. You pull the trigger, you spray. Any excess paint runs onto this and into the thing. Any water you flush through, you can push through here, spray it. So you just leave this on top of there, spray. Let's the gases or whatever vent out, but leaves the paint in the bottom. A little bit of water in the bottom of here, or water as you're flushing it through the system. It just keeps the mess down as you're flushing the airbrush. So that's a nice thing to have. It's definitely not essential. The first couple of bodies I did literally just spray into a jam jar, and that was entirely fine. This is like a nice to have for just being able to keep everything down. And I think that is enough about the airbrush and the kit that goes with. That is a fairly minimal amount of airbrush kit, compressor, airbrush. Like I say, the kit I've mentioned, the compressor and the airbrush is all in one. I'm using Vallejo paints. I know there are a great many other recommended ones. I haven't got any experience to be able to tell you either way. But I'll clear this up. I've got my body ready to go. I've got to do a bit of masking on the body, like window mask, that kind of stuff, and then we'll crack on with some painting. So I've mixed myself up something that is equivalent, let's say, to Tamiya Gunmetal. That's basically some amount of some amount of metallic black, some amount of grey, a really small amount of grey, and then an amount of metallic medium, just to make the extra metallic. Metallic black is good, but because the grey's not, we've put some of the extra metallic medium in to fill it out a bit. And we've got something that is, like I say, perhaps not well lit enough here at the moment to really tell, but this is something in the vicinity of Tamiya Gunmetal. That's the intent anyway. Just to demonstrate to begin with, I've got a little offcut here of Lexan. This is obviously a wheel arch from something or the other. This is the Lexan, the film that's on here. I guess you could tell from it where it might come from. So here's the airbrush. As I mentioned before, you press it down to let the air. So that's the air coming out when I push my finger down, and then the paint comes out when I pull the trigger back at the same time. So if I just show you on this offcut, try and get it somewhere near. I'm a bit close here, but I just want to. So that's just air at the moment, and when I put my finger back, we'll get some spray. See there, some amount of grey. You'll see that differently in the sunlight, but you can kind of see already where I've sprayed it heavy. You can see dark. Hopefully, there noise cancelling, taking out the sound of the compressor. But that really is not much more than dusting at the moment. But you can see it's already just about dry in a way that like a dust coat of a Tamiya spray can doesn't do. So we can do more already. So that's not quite a full coat on. I've dialed back how much is coming out at the moment. We will adjust that. Here we go. And it's not the most even. I've done it fairly close up, but already you can see we're most of the way done, and we've been doing. We just messed around for a couple of minutes there. It's a bit thick in some places and thin in others, but overall, you can already see. What I really want to do with that was to see what's it come out as. Does that look like the kind of gunmetal colour I'm aiming for? And the simple answer is yes. I think it probably could be a touch darker for what I'm doing, but you'll see that in a moment. Question is whether it's got enough metallic in it, or whether I want to pull out like a lame flake. You can certainly see here, look, where I've been heavy, that's carried through and gives me a spot in the paint. So for carrying this kind of metallic medium in it, you do need to be quite careful about how you're doing it. Yeah. So here is my Madcap body, ready for me to give dust coat of this grey. Is it going to be dark enough is the real question. I'm going to go back over the back of it with black. So the real question is, will it end up working enough? Let's do it. There you go. There's a dust coat already on. I guarantee that will be done in a few minutes and we can crack on. I'll join you a bit later. Well, there you go. I got a bit carried away after my dust coats and whatnot. Did a few coats of the gunmetal. Didn't wait any time and then peeled off the masking I had on the inside so that I could finish it, hit it with a couple of coats of black, and there we are, done. All told, I guess painting has been maybe an hour or something like that. And this isn't very complex in terms of paint. It is something I could have done with rattle cans, but I can't rattle can indoors, can I? So the plan with this is some of the outside is going to be flat clear. So I've left the protective film on at the moment. I will check it in the morning when I've got daylight outside and see how much I need to go to touch at things. It's probably the case I can give it a quick blast of black just to fill in anything that might be missing. It looks generally pretty good at the moment. So we'll do that. We'll take some of the panellings away to be able to hit it with a flat clear, and then we'll call that done. This is going to be the body shell I use for two-wheel drive at Eden Park. So Darth can have the Madcap and Luke Skywalker can have the Toms. Hope you've enjoyed watching and join me again soon.